Hi, everyone. I'm Rachael Nemeth, CEO and co-founder of Opus Training. Today, I'm sitting down with Neil Amin, CEO of Shamin Hotels, Virginia's largest hotel operator. They have 76 properties across 6 states and more than 3,000 associates. One of the things that you see on their website is a note from Neil. It says, today, Shamin Hotels is a successful business, but at its core, it is and always will be about family, meaning both my own and the extended family that includes every associate in this company. And I think that right there tells you so much about Neil, how he operates as an executive. Shamin operates franchised properties under Hilton, Marriott, IHG, Hyatt, which means that he really isn't writing the brand promise. He's responsible for the 3,000 people who are delivering on that promise every day. And I think that is a people problem at scale, and it's exactly what we're here to talk about. So, Neil, welcome to Back to Basics. It's so nice to speak with you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Let's start with the basics. So, you have this really interesting background. You went to Wharton, you spent time at Goldman Sachs advising tech companies. Then you came back to the family business. So, like, why? What made you come back to Shamin?
I guess in a lot of ways, I mean, it sounds silly, but hospitality is in my blood. I grew up living in motels. I did not live in a house until I was 13 years old.
Mm,
So really
wow.
until I was 13, I lived in motels and, my parents built a house when I was 13 and they still live there today. And, I've watched them really for decades just take care of guests. I mean, when we're living in hotels, associates were my babysitters. A lot of times we had college students who were studying and you were doing this as a side job, and I got to know them. And then guests became my friends. We had a restaurant, and as a child, I would eat there and just make friends with guests. So, over time, I didn't realize it at the time, but over time, it molded me into who I am today.
Mhm.
And really just more of a people person who, enjoys being around people and taking care of, others around me. So, and then I also saw, how this industry can really shapes people's lives. I mean, again, the thing that we love about this industry, I'm sure you know this, is that you don't need, a college degree to be successful in this industry, right? So we've
Mhm.
seen so many people that have come into this industry, with a smile and a caring attitude and have become executives, right? And we talk about that over and over again at Shamin, and it's just so powerful.
Hmm. Well, that journey there back into the world of hospitality, obviously you had deep roots in it already. You started by spending 6 years as CFO of Shamin before becoming CEO, which I think is a really interesting path. I've talked to folks who are CMOs who grow into CEO, and I think you bring such a unique perspective. When you made that transition, was there anything you realized in the numbers that had been missing, moving from CFO to CEO and having a fresh perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question because, a lot of people that are new to the industry right now are just, reaching out and trying to understand how to, bring the next generation in and, what training they should get. And what I see a lot of people do is they start off in acquisitions and development. That sounds fun, exciting, but I think that's probably not the best place to start. I think it's important to start as an operator, right? Because you need to understand the business, how it makes money, the challenges that your associate face, what your guests demand before you can decide what to buy or build. And so that's when I started, as CFO. And one of the first things that I realized is that, my father's a visionary, so smart and so intelligent. He just assumes that everybody knew what he knew. So he would walk around to a hotel and say, "This is obvious. Why aren't you doing this? Or don't you see this?" I mean, he wouldn't say in
Not
that,
here. Yeah.
but just be like, it's common sense. For him, it was common sense. And then I quickly realized that there's a little bit of disconnect. We have great people, but they need to be trained, right? And they need to be trained to think like he does, see what he does, right? And that's what I really started off doing in the first few years is creating tools, dashboards, procedures, so that way somebody who had no experience in this business could pick something up and become an excellent leader and learn the Shamin way. That was really my goal first initially.
And we're going to get into that franchise dynamic and the training dynamic here because I think it's so interesting, especially with your particular operation. So I want to come back to that. The one kind of biting question I have just about you, the human, is you spent your entire career in kind of one industry, largely at one company. Was there ever a moment where you have ever considered doing something seriously different?
Well, I definitely, I was trained in finance and, so I definitely enjoyed that. And, I enjoyed the thing I loved about working at Goldman is that, it's so fast paced, so transactional. You're meeting a new CEO every single day, right? And
Mhm.
learning about their business and what their moat is and what their competitive advantage is. So I definitely, admire that part of that job and I miss that sometimes. But, what I've learned over the years, most recently, is that I feel that my team at Shamin can take on any industry. It's really about managing people, motivating them, and training them and creating a culture. I think we would have been just as successful in manufacturing or, medical sales or because at the end of the day, it's just about creating that culture and being able to take your people to the next level. And so, you know, probably it's been 40 years or really I've been here 25 years. My parents started 40 years ago. We haven't done it yet, but we are seriously considering that. We did get into assisted living. So we're
Mm,
trying to tiptoe into businesses that are similar to
sure.
hospitality. So we get into assisted living. It's funny, now the hospital CEOs locally, they've seen how we provide, hospitality to our guests, and they've asked, can you help us think about our hospital rooms,
Sure. Sure.
right? Because, I mean, it shouldn't be institution. It should be, warm and friendly and inviting, just like a hotel room. So we're looking at that, like, is there some things that we can do to help that industry? So, it's a great question. I think as long as we're working with people, motivating them, I think we can be successful and we may pursue something else.
Hmm. One thing that I'm curious about is whether the real edge here is less about the hospitality itself then, and it's
Mhm.
more just about your ability to turn your instincts into, or anyone's instincts into, repeatable training that help people learn that good judgment quickly. Because it's a lot of the je ne sais quoi in hospitality. How much of that comes through at the brand level? And this is what I'm starting to kind of venture into is
Yeah.
how much when you witness, oh, I have great people, but something's missing. How much was it the kind of service level of we have these kind of unseen, unspoken things that we do, and how much of it was the operational, no, 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 I have an SOP, you need to follow it.
Well, I think, people they have to have the drive and the commitment to take care of the guests, right? That's the
Hmm.
first thing. So we always say we can't teach leadership, we can't teach culture. And we have three core values at Shamin. They are to team up, to take ownership of the task at hand, no matter whatever it is, and to passionately serve not only our guests, but our fellow associates, as well as our communities. And these core values were not created by me. We actually hired a consultant and they went around and interviewed all of our associates and asked them, what do you think Shamin represents to yourself as well as to the external community? And they came up with these three core values. So now, that was probably maybe 15 years ago. Now we live and die by those core values. It's how we do evaluations. It's how we think about, new projects, how we think about new initiatives like Opus. That's the first thing that we do is look for somebody that has, we call it core value aligned with us, right? They have to be core value aligned. We can teach them the business, right? And that's where, the SOPs and the training tools and leading by example, following the golden rule, those are the tools that we have to get people from, somebody who's not familiar with this industry to become an executive and a superstar.
Okay, let's get into it. So you are a franchisee under multiple brand flags, and which means that the brand sets the standard. So Marriott is setting the standard, and then your team has to deliver that across all of the properties every single day. What does that actually require of you as a leader, and what does that require of your managers every day to be doing and thinking and communicating?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, of course, the brands are coming up with tools and, policies and procedures to take care of the guests. But, we take it one step further, right? So we have, the Hilton standards or the Marriott standards, which are great. They've done a great job. But, you can imagine there's thousands and thousands of hotels across the world, right? And so the standard that may make a lot of sense in one part of the world or one part of the country may not work in every single hotel that we have. So we're very focused on that, unique experience, that tailored experience, and also that Shamin experience, right? So we really believe about memorable experiences. We want to, give people what they expect, but then provide them a little bit more, because that's how great hotels are made. It's really delivering things that are unexpected. And so, we call it the Shamin touch, right? To give them something that is unexpected, that touches them, that makes them remember the hotel. And that's what we really focus on when we talk about the Shamin standards that are aside from the brand standards.
Can you give me a couple examples of the Shamin touch?
So we definitely do it on design. So we take the design that's, we have a required design, but then we put some moments in there where the guests may not, think that this would be seen in this type of hotel, whether it's food and beverage or whether it's murals. We've done that a lot of times. We hire a local muralist and they put a nice mural. And then of course on the service side, right? So it could be, this is a true example. We had associates clear off the snow of cars overnight when it snowed. And then
Yeah.
when those guests went back in the morning, they were just blown away, right?
Mm,
Somebody would come out there in the middle of the night and clearing off the snow from their car.
yeah.
So that's an example of the Shamin touch.
I call that making it nice. Yeah. Okay, so I hear you on bringing that sort of extra level, that next level piece. As I think as a franchisee, really your competitors are running the same brands and the same rooms and the same loyalty programs. And so the only thing that I would imagine you can actually differentiate is your people and your approach. So how do you think about what makes your operation different? Is it the people? Is it something else? And and I think if it is the people, how do you think about investing in them in order to kind of get them there?
It definitely is the people. And I'm not just saying that, and I'll tell you why. Because, I always think about whether it's this business or any business, what is my competitive advantage, right? Why can I do this better than the next
Yep.
person, right? What's my moat? And for us, a big part of that is that we are not driven by quarterly results. We don't have to, answer to somebody, right? And so we are taking a very long view on every single thing that we do,
Mm,
from where we invest in for new hotels, how we build hotels. If you think about it, like how we design hotels, we want to make them easy to operate for our associates, right? We want to make it so that guests, feel invited, not just we're saving a penny here because we're going to flip the hotel a year from now, right?
mm,
So it starts even from when we build the hotel, and then you apply that, of course, to the people, right? We actually probably prefer people that have no experience. We can train. Obviously, we employ we employ all sorts of people. Some people have experience, some people don't. But what we found is that people that have experience, they've been trained to kind of meet those quarterly goals, and it's a very corporate kind of philosophy, right? They have the corporate speak about making sure that they're not admitting to a mistake, and we tell them, look, we're not a gotcha company, right? We're all one team with the same mission, right? We have long-term goals. We're not going to solve every problem today. We all make mistakes, including myself. We want people to make mistakes. We want people to take risks because that's how we learn as a company,
mm,
and then that's how we provide better guest service. And then what happens is over time, obviously that energizes people, right? I mean, people then, they think about new ideas. They think about new ways to take care of our guests. Our guests are happier, right? And then of course that just helps the company continue to grow and continue to perform well. So I think it's just taking that long-term view, and then with that long-term view, being able to invest in our people. And it's not just lip service. And I'll tell you, our senior executives have been with us over 25 years and started off as, front desk clerks.
mm.
And I'm not talking
Yeah.
about one person, I'm talking about many people. And so, that's the proof in the pudding. And I'm not, I'm not handcuffing them to Shamin Hotels.
Sure.
I mean,
But
they could,
something's keeping them there, and I wonder if a lot of it is that you haven't sort of over corporatized it. You're a very large company, and it still feels like a family business. And I think most operators at your scale, if I'm not mistaken, you haven't taken any outside capital while you've grown, right?
correct. Yes, that's
And I
correct.
think that's really remarkable. Shamin has stayed family owned and privately held throughout this whole period. What was really driving that decision? I'm sure you've had opportunities come your way, especially with your finance background.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely my father had that view that, he wanted to be able to control his own destiny,
Mm,
right? And not have to answer to anyone and not have to explain himself because he does things differently in a positive way, right? I mean, he takes a long-term view on things. He sees things differently. And so I think from the very beginning, that was kind of the thought. But even after that, we obviously recently, or in the last, even the last 10, 15, 20 years, we could take in capital, but we've decided not to because, again, we just want to be able to do things that help our associates, our guests, and our communities. One of the things that we're proud of at Shamin is that now we're in the stage we're transforming communities,
mm,
right? We're choosing projects that really make a difference that others can't do. We're not picking the project that has the highest ROI, right? We
hmm.
could go out and build the same hotel 100 times across the country, and maybe that's easy, and you can make a good return. But we're doing the opposite. We're taking on challenging projects, working with localities to solve the needs of their communities, revitalizing communities. And I think and I hope and I believe that our associates are proud to be part of that.
Hmm. How does that differ from, maybe you can kind of educate our listeners. So, how are you transforming communities versus what, I don't know, big box hotel operators would be doing? Not necessarily what's driving the decision, but what is the outcome of that?
Yeah, I mean, so the classic example is that we are looking at areas that, maybe have not got as much attention recently. So you think about indoor malls,
Mm,
right? That have lost favor, and that community does not want an eyesore there, right? So one of the things that we did is, we purchased an indoor mall, and we ended up revitalizing that. We built two hotels, two restaurants, and that's a very successful project.
hmm. Yeah.
And then
Interesting.
we also, one of our localities, they needed a full service conference center hotel, because they don't have a place to hold state of the county graduations, very large marquee events. That's a very challenging endeavor, right? Whether it's in Virginia or anywhere in the country these days, to build a big full service conference hotel. And we took on that challenge, and that hotel is under construction right now, and I think everybody's just extremely excited about it. It's and not only our associates, but even Hilton. It's a Hilton branded hotel, and I think they're very excited to see kind of the next phase of Hilton in that project.
I wanted to clarify something with you. So,
Yes.
when we started this conversation, I used the term properties. I've noticed that you're saying localities. Is that a different term than a property? Is it something that
Yeah.
unique to
So
Sheen?
sorry. What I mean by locality, I mean like the
Yeah.
the city, the
Okay. The
city.
city itself. Yeah.
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 Yes.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about you. We've sort of had the zoomed out version of Shamin, but when you are actually walking around a property unannounced, Neil,
Hmm.
what are you actually looking for? What are you listening for?
The first thing I do is I look and see what our associates are doing. Are they stretched too thin? That is by far the first thing I do is observe. Are they able to meet the guest needs, or do they need more support? And
Hmm.
not just at the front door, but back of house, housekeeping, walk around everywhere, talk to them. What is a challenge? An example, like I met a room attendant who is a room attendant that works on the fifth floor of one of our hotels, and she told me that my cart is always housed on the second floor. So
Hmm.
every day when I come in, I have to go and get my cart on the second floor. I have to wait for the elevator and then bring it up, and then at the end of the day take it down. And if there was a spot on the fifth floor where I could store it, that would save me a lot of time and effort. Why do we have to store all of them on the second? So that's what I do when I go to hotels is I listen to my associates because I get some of my best ideas when I talk to these associates at hotels. They see things that we don't see, right? They know the workflow, they know what guests require, what makes guests happy and what irritates guests, and then we take that back.
I mean, a lot of what I'm hearing, Neil, is that your edge is really operational empathy. It's not just brand standards,
Oh yeah.
and I think that's so unique to you all. I talk to operators every day, and I candidly, like, I'm not confident that that's how most operators are walking into their facilities.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of operators are walking in and they're saying, "How can I get more out of my people?" Which is also a reasonable ask too in certain environments. But it's interesting that you're coming in and you're saying, "Are my people stretched too thin?" Because knowing that that's gonna the guest experience is gonna be sacrificed if we don't, focus on that. Here's where I want to dig in with you even more is, you became CEO in 2008, I think,
Mhm.
right into the recession,
Yes.
which meant your first years leading through the company were really defined by the worst economic downturns hospitality has ever seen, absent of COVID. So, what did that period teach you about yourself as a leader?
It's a great question. The first thing that we did was just move into the hotels. Not just myself, my wife. It's an interesting story. I got married in 2008. So
Sure, sure.
going, yeah. And I said, "Welcome to the industry." you know. So she worked at we just opened a full service Hilton, our largest project ever. And so she worked in that office and, helped with marketing and accounting. And so, and then I did the same thing. We kind of split duties and just really rolled up our sleeves and
Mm,
just, supported the associates, try to think creatively about how we can bring business into these hotels and how we can differentiate ourselves, and I think people appreciate that. It's not just me, uh, whole team, whole senior leadership did that, and I'll tell you, that hotel that opened at that time, that full service Hilton, is probably our most successful hotel today because it was set up properly. The
hmm,
culture was set up in that way of pitching in, working as a team, taking care of each other.
sure. Um, you know, you, I had mentioned this before, front and center on your website, it says every associate's equal and that leadership should never ask someone to do something that, they wouldn't do themselves, which is a lot of what you've been describing. Um, I think the lingering question for me is, how do you maintain that at scale now across 76 properties, though?
I mean, we're very strict on it. I'll tell you an example. Like I don't, we don't, none of us work remotely. Even during the pandemic, we only probably for 2 weeks when there was a concern about really like the scare of the virus, did we not come into the office because my associates and my hotel leaders have to come in. They can't work
Mm,
remote. I think it's just it doesn't make sense to me when we corporate ask people to come in and then they work remote, right?
yeah.
So like that was number one. Number two, I dress like this every day, and a lot of people maybe ridicule me for that sometimes. But my general managers at our hotels, they have to dress up too, right? So that's what's important to me, to do that. So,
Well, let's actually move on to my last two questions, which
okay.
is, um, y- y- you and I met when you were evaluating Opus as a potential training platform for your workforce.
Mhm.
What was Shamin trying to solve for when you started to look at how you train people? What was the problem to solve there?
Sure. It's a great question. And, we really have spent a lot of time trying to think about what LMS tool we'd want. And we evaluate a lot. And, I was really amazed with what you've created at Opus. The challenges that we were facing, there were so many, and I think Opus really tackled all of them. One was career mapping, right? That was very important for us, right? To be able to show our people that we're not just providing a job, but a career. We're not
Mm,
hiring you as a room attendant, but we're hiring you to have a career in hospitality. And obviously Opus does that so well, right? So that was number one. Number two, a minor one is actual communication with our frontline associates,
sure.
right? If you think about it, right now I have to maybe email them if I have their email address. Not everybody has email in this industry. So having 100% mobile friendly app is priceless,
Mm,
and that's been extremely valuable. Then of course the ease of training, being able to create training easily is very important. We're not an IT company, right? Our leaders, they're not experts at, creating YouTube videos and training modules. And so being able to, use AI and create those really quick training modules, I think was very important.
mm,
And then just, standardizing the process around training, right? I mean, having the Shamin SOPs, being able to utilize, AI to search through our whole database of SOPs is very important. We have binders and binders of SOPs that nobody has looked at, and now when we upload them into Opus, everybody can access them.
mm.
The last thing is really just self-training, right? Training on your own pace versus having a team of HR business partners out there trying to train associates. Now is training on your own pace.
Mm. I love that last piece. I feel like it's so misunderstood in the training space
Mhm.
in general that asynchronous learning is so powerful. So you know, let's think ahead a little bit, Neil. At some point you're going to hand this business to someone else. How do you think about that next phase of Shamin? And in the context of succession planning, sure, but also just the next chapter of Shamin. Is that something that you're thinking about now?
It is, but I'll say this, and I say this all the time. Shamin does not need me. This company is so strong with such a solid foundation of so many people who are passionate about what we do that I'm just here to help, where I can, and like I said, our people know our guests the best. They know what the guests need and they support one another without me being involved. I don't have to tell people what to do. They anticipate what needs to be done in this company and they solve problems. And that's really why it's so successful. So I think it's we definitely will have another leader that will come in, but I think this company will continue to progress without me as well.
Well, and I think what stands out to me is that your real moat is not, even the assets, but the fact that you've just built the system where frontline judgment gets stronger as you scale. And the thread I keep hearing is that you're not using training to enforce compliance alone. You're using it to teach people how to see, which is a very different kind of operating model. And it's rare for me to hear someone, a CEO, no less, say, listen, like this place can actually run without me.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
such a mark
definitely.
of the
Yeah.
success of like the level of hospitality that you all bring. We're gonna finish up with a lightning round, Neil.
Okay, let's do it.
These are hard, fast questions. Keep it brief. Leave people in pure mystery about
Okay.
yourself.
Good.
I'm gonna rattle them off. So first question, what was your first job?
Circuit City salesperson.
What's the hospitality trend that you're completely over?
Bistros in hotels.
What's the last book you read?
Lincoln.
Best hotel stay you've had in the last year that wasn't one of yours.
There. Click Clack Median, Columbia.
Okay, cool. What are you going back to basics on personally right now?
Incorporating long runs in running.
Hmm. And if you could give your 25-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
We have long careers. Take the first 10 years to learn as much as possible. Dive into trenches in every area, construction, maintenance, culinary, whatever industry you're in, just dive into the trenches.
What's a hotel or hospitality operator that really inspires you right now?
Wow, that's a great question.
Hmm.
I think really Four Seasons does it very well.
Mm.
I mean, they manage their own hotels and, I think that just like us, we manage our own hotels. I think that enables them to take a different view on things, a long-term view, and really protect that brand integrity. I don't see them wavering or, moving away from what their core philosophy is,
Mm.
you know.
So then, who should we be talking to next? Who should be my next interviewee?
Oh gosh. I can get you a list in terms of clients for sure. But I mean,
Well,
honestly,
you would.
yeah, no, I mean, I think the large companies are they're Crestline, Crescent. Those are some big companies that I think have done really well. HEI Hotels is another big one who's done well. But I think you should talk to Hilton directly,
Mm.
Marriott directly, because they're trying to figure this out as well. So I
Hmm.
think there could be a way to, partner with the brands directly.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Well, Neil, such a pleasure to see you, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's my honor. Thank you so much.